Hello, and welcome to the Kathleen Spracklin podcast. I am a woman on a mission to gather a cadre of writers, thinkers, and teachers who are transforming the world, one character at a time. And it all starts with one thing: a deep understanding of human motivation, why people do what they do, and the forces that drive them. To gain that understanding, I am mining the intersection of psychology, theology, and philosophy to make you a better writer. This is episode 129 for Zettelkasten, the value of having a problem to work on. Well, some people say that in order to really be an effective Zettelkasten user, or in order to really even need a Zettelkasten or want a Zettelkasten, you have to have a problem you're working on. I disagree. I started my Zettelkasten just out of a love of knowledge. I was on the verge of retiring, and I wanted to have the enjoyment of being able to pursue whatever subjects I wanted to pursue and follow whatever rabbit trails they led down. And I did not have any need to write or any practical desire to write. And I still loved and enjoyed and delighted in creating my Zettelkasten. That said, once I acquired a problem, everything changed. Now, I acquired a problem that was quite intractable, and that's very helpful as well. You see, the problem I was trying to solve was, how is my precious niece going to be able to write when she only had small fragments of time in which to write, and where the time was such that by the time she got her head back into her story, there was no more time left to write. So how do you solve a problem like that? Well, one solution came rather quickly through the Zettelkasten. Well, just use a Zettelkasten. A Zettelkasten is perfect for keeping your place in things. Why, all you have to do is set up your scenes and your characters and mark a little card and journal, make a note of where you left off in your writing journal, and ta-da! You know exactly where you left off. But that's not the whole of the problem. That's the easy part of the problem. The hard part of the problem was, how do you get back into the emotional state of the story right where you were emotionally at that point in the story? That turned out to be a rather hard problem. And not only that, it was a problem that my Zettelkasten did not apparently have an answer for. That didn't stop me from keeping it in the back of my mind. I didn't have an answer, but I was still concerned about it because I care very much about my family members, and this was a problem that I thought I ought to be able to help solve. So I kept it in the back of my mind, and I continued to learn more information. Well, I've said several times already in this podcast that one of the beauties of a Zettelkasten is when you put two ideas together, the idea that you tucked away was enough to fill your whole head. Then you tucked it away. You have a new, fresh idea enough to fill your whole head. That's very exciting. And when you go to file it, the two ideas bounce in together. They touch one another. And for a moment in time, you've got two heads full of information in one head. It's like, boom, you've doubled your mental capacities for at least for an instant. You kind of get all of that thrown together in one spot. Well, having a problem that you're working on, having something that's nagging you in the back of your mind, is like always having an idea to bring to the card. Every card you pick up, you can look at it and say, is this the answer to my problem? In fact, I've heard it said that Feynman used to keep a whole list of problems. The physicist, the well-known great physicist Feynman, would always have a set of problems that he was working on, and every new thing he read, he would test it against his list of problems. I just had one, but I'll tell you, it makes a big difference. And it begins to start directing the things that you're reading on. Because when you read on something and it's like, well, it's not the answer, but it sure feels like it's related to the answer, that the excitement of having those two ideas bouncing against one another in that testing going on, does this work, does this work, does this work, is so mentally stimulating that it tends to drive you down that same research path to see if you can get some more of it. So it definitely does help to have a problem that you're working on. Well, I've got some boxes out here, and I've got them out here to kind of talk through a point. When you're working on a specific problem, especially if it's in a new domain to you, it's rather amazing the degree to which a Zettelkasten can help you hone in on the most important sources in that area. And the answer lies in the interaction of these three alphabetical sections of the Zettelkasten. This section with these blue alphabetic numbers is my index. You can't really do a Zettelkasten without an index. You wouldn't know where to place your next card. Your next card is always going to be consulting that index to say, what is the most perfect parent for this new card? Well, this other multicolored section back here is my author box. And here are the creators of those wonderful ideas that are stored in the Zettelkasten. Now, authors point quite regularly, very simply in fact, they point over to the bib cards that describe their work. And likewise, the bib cards that describe their work point back to the authors. So there's a couple of links right there. It's kind of it helps you find things, but it doesn't expand anything, just being the author to his work and the work back to the author. But when you start looking at references, when you start looking at attribution, the world opens up in two temporal directions. Now, it's tempting to say that attributions only look backwards. Because after all, if you're reading a book, it can't cite anything that wasn't written yet at the time the book was created. It can only cite backwards. Well, if you look at a number of books in the field and they're all citing backwards, you can very quickly establish which writers were foundational in the field that you're studying, because they're the ones that everybody links back to. And going forward, the interesting thing too is you can find in reference catalogs what other writers link to the people in your author box, link to the works in your bib box. So by future citations, assuming that now we are in the future of this thing that was written maybe in the 20s or 30s or even the 70s or 80s, the future work will link back to and cite the work that you're looking at. So the work you're looking at can cite backwards to it, and by its very name, you can see future citations that point back to it. So you get a whole web through space and time. And through the frequency of these citations, you can quickly establish who are the foundational authors, which authors developed the subject going through time, and who is working on the topic at the current moment. And if you bring to that the very topic that you yourself are working on, now you have everything you need, because now you have your ideas that are activating and driving your search, and you have the links that you need to get into, around, and through the literature. And then, of course, once you're citing something, as we've said so many times, the bib cards point to cards in the Zettelkasten, and they are in turn indexed in the index box. So it's a marvelous, marvelous way of taking ideas and running with them. So I hope that was of some help to you on this philosophical. The problem itself provides an enormous motivation as you work, because it gives you another possibility to get those little wins. Every time you get a little piece of information that helps with the problem you're working on, you get another win. And it just makes everything so much more fun. I would definitely say a problem makes a Zettelkasten more fun, but it also does something else. And it gives me another way of thinking about a phrase that you might have often heard when it comes to Zettelkasten. It has been said that a Zettelkasten will make you a writing machine. Well, I didn't have any plans to write anything. I certainly didn't think of this book when I started my Zettelkasten. Maybe it made me a writing machine. Maybe it'll make you a writing machine. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.